Maybe. There we go. Okay. Hey, Andrew. All right. Hey, friends. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I am super excited to have with me the one and only JCM Berne, author of Wistful Ascending. I'm very excited to get a chance tonight to talk with him about characters and space stations and all of the things. Joe, thank you so much for agreeing to do the interview.
Thank you, Tori. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited.
So for anybody who is like maybe unfamiliar with your book watching this interview, I don't know how they would have missed it at this point.
How could that happen?
Mind-boggling, really. But I would love to know, in the author's own words, can you give us a little bit of a promo pitch for what is Wistful Ascending?
Wistful Ascending. What is Wistful Ascending? So Wistful Ascending is the first book in the hybrid, turn one in the hybrid Helix. It is I have my own copy too. We can parallel it. I think I got.
You have the nice hardcover edition.
Hardcover edition, yeah. I splurged because it's my book. So it's the story of this guy Rohan, who is a superpowered being, and he lives on a space station, and it's a superhero space opera story. And if you want a sense of tone, it's people have said it's Harry Dresden meets Thor. It's a lot like Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a lot of, I think people think there's a lot of humor in it. There's some action. I think it was primarily an action story, a plot-driven story, character, with a Susan of character development is what I've said in the past. I don't know, but it's my passion project. It's everything I love in a book. So I'm a story geek. I've been a story geek my whole life. I read a lot of books. I read a lot of comic books. I watch a lot of shows. I watch a lot of cartoons, and I have been doing so for 40 years because I'm an old man. That's a lot of stories I've consumed, and all the stuff I love, I just kind of pour it into these books. And all the things that annoy me, I don't put into the books. And I think those are the two key components to my writing. It's the stuff I love and not the stuff that annoys me, which is a lot because I'm an easily annoyable Grinch of a person. So the books, and they resonate with some people really like them. And if you want to know, I honestly go read the reviews.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pitch it. I'm more than that because that's not really reasonable because I wrote it. Of course I love it. If you're curious, you should go read the reviews or the YouTube videos. There's plenty of people telling you what they think, and they'll do a better job than I will. And I'm a code monkey. I write software, so that's my day job.
Nice. I would kind of maybe have, I don't know if I would have guessed that at all from anything in Wistful.
I don't think there's much crossover. They're not gonna have long debugging sessions to try to figure out like some database loader.
Yeah, I feel like Rohan would get bored with that very quickly.
He might, but he wouldn't have been allowed to do a life like
touch anything. Yeah. Well, if you want, I was thinking I could share a little bit about like my experience going into the book before we get into the questions. Because I read a ton of very kind of dark fantasy kind of stuff. Most people on my channel know my style at this point. And I was really interested in reading a book that was going to break up my TBR a little bit and give me something very different. And so the cover actually was one of the things that hooked me right away because I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. I'm here for it. What is this? Yeah. And I was really excited because I had seen the space opera superhero kind of stuff. And I thought, you know what, I bet that I'm going to get some Firefly vibes out of this. And I absolutely love that idea. So I picked it up and I read it, and I was amazed and thrilled with how much I loved it. It was so, there's so much heart in this story. And that's one of the things I'm excited to get into with some of the questions, because that was like some of my favorite parts of the story. He's just a great main character. And it was amazing to me how much by the time I got to the book, I was like, I'm in this 9 to 5 with him. And I love this story and I love this character. And it's great.
Thank you so much. That's really because put a lot of effort into him.
Well, you can tell. He's probably one of my favorite main characters of the year, as far as just how easily I was willing, because I have a hard time with main characters sometimes because they get a little too something or other usually. And Rohan was very comfortable for me as a main character. I just really enjoyed reading from his perspective.
Yeah, people ask like what went into Rohan, and honestly, like my first thoughts are what I want him to not be, as opposed to what I wanted him to be.
Mm-hmm.
I was almost led there. Like I told you, I'm a Grinch. Right? I get easily annoyed by a lot of things. Like I really like the retired gunslinger trope. You know,
Yeah.
I love Rurouni Kenshin. I know you're a big, you know,
Big, yep.
fan. You know, John Wick. You know, I don't want to hear about the guy going on the hero's journey. Like I'm 50. You know, like don't. I was a teenager. Those are great stories. I've read. You know, I read Wheel of Time. Like I'm okay with it. Being someone who's been through the hero's journey and been spit out the back end of it. Like it's 10 years later, and now what does he look like? You know,
right.
Harry Potter should have started 10 years after he defeated what's his name, Voldemort, and he's like retired. He's got like a painkiller addiction from injuries he suffered doing professional Quidditch, and he's getting his first, you know, divorce, and his kids don't like him anymore. Like that would have been a much better Harry. That's the Harry Potter I wanted to read.
Yep.
You know, that wouldn't have sold many books, but still,
would have been a good book though.
Yeah, right. I still think it's a good book. That's the fanfic. That's a Harry Potter fanfic I wanted to write that I never wrote. But but then like, but you know, those characters are often like too tormented and too like, oh, woe is me. I'm gonna self-destruct with alcohol and drugs because I'm so tormented. I'm like, dude, you know, like step back. Like we've all done stuff. Try to do better. Like let's not like him or a Kenshin, right? Like, you know, you get to a point in those stories where it's like, just kill someone already. Like, okay, we get it. You're trying really hard not to kill anyone. Mazel tov, you've done great. Your friends are at risk now because you're like, oh, I won't use the other side of my sword on a person. I'm like, just do us all a favor. It's enough already.
Yep.
And you can see I get annoyed. I get worked up. I'm like, Kenshin, kill someone. So I'm like, I'm a ready character who will really try not to kill people, but when the time comes, he's going to do it. He's going to pull the trigger. He's going to pull the trigger because like, all right, this is enough.
Yeah.
It's no longer like a sensible choice to make. So I tried to avoid those pitfalls. You know, every time I read something in a book, which I've read a lot of books, that annoys me, I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Well, it just goes back to the write the book you want to read.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And it sounds like you did.
100%. I wrote this book for me, and that's why I almost feel bad. Not feel bad. Feel bad is the wrong word. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people who write to market. And I respect that decision because you make more money, and you know, as a business person, as a business, you make it. We're here to make money on some level, some more than others. But like, I get writing to market, but then you're not writing. But you know, if you have the luxury of being able to write primarily for yourself, you just get a different experience.
Yeah,
that's why I think people sometimes, and I'm not looking down on anyone who's writing to market, but sometimes I feel like some authors do. And I get it, you know, because you don't get as pure an experience as if I'm just writing the book I want to read.
Right.
100%. No, you know, and you know, does that hurt my sales? Or probably, you know, if I wrote to market, I probably, you know, if I wrote the romance novel with Rohan and the Three Bears or something, and made it like a gay, you know, interspecies, I bet I'd sell a lot more books. But and there's nothing wrong if someone else wants to write that book. It's just not. That's not.
It's not your book.
That's not my shtick. You know, that's not.
Yeah.
Again, no shade on anyone writing interspecies porn. Like, fantastic for them, but that's not what makes my heart, you know, resonate. So that's not what resonates with me. So, yeah.
Well, I prefer your book, just for the record, to any of those.
I wouldn't be on your show if I wrote, you know.
No, probably not.
So.
Yeah, when you write that book, I don't know. We'll just keep it with Wistful for this one.
It's never coming from my typewriter, I think, unless
there you go.
Unless they fire me from my day job, which hopefully.
Yeah, there you go. Write those for marketing, and then write the rest of Hybrid Helix on the side.
Yeah.
Looks like we have some Rurouni Kenshin fans in the chat section, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Huge fan.
Yeah, I read the whole manga series, read all the watched all the anime, every last bit. Yeah, I mean, it never occurred to me that how many parallels there were between Rohan and Blade of the Immortal is excellent, except for the last third of it.
Yeah.
And the last third's not so good, but I really like Blade of the Immortal. But I didn't really think of the parallels between Kenshin and Rohan until after I wrote like 2 books. And someone was talking about Kenshin, maybe you. I don't remember who it was. And I was like, huh, Oh,
I've
yeah.
mentioned, I've done quite a bit on Kenshin on my channel.
Yeah,
So
I've heard you talk about it. I don't remember if that was the first time I put it together. I'm like, there's a lot of parallels there.
It is funny because there's, I mean, I guess I hadn't even thought of that until just now, but that makes total sense to me.
Yeah. And there's a lot of influences that I realize. I'm like, oh yeah, that that really, like, I pulled in some stuff from there. Like I use John Wick example too, because you're the sort of same thing. Like John Wick's a guy, he's a little more depressed than Rohan ever is in the books. He's a little more because whatever, that's the way they made the movie. But he's a guy, he's been through his character development. He's become the guy he is. He just wants to be left alone. They kill his dog. If you've seen John Wick, I'm so sorry for the spoiler. You got to forgive me for that one.
It's totally fine.
That's a lot like what happens, there's a real strong parallel there as well, right? Rohan is basically, he would like to be left alone and do his work, and then stuff happens and it's like, oh well, they don't kill his dog. Anyone watching this, there's no dogs die. No one on camera, so no dogs.
So you talking about your influences leads us into where every story starts somewhere. It has some little nugget that catalysts us into the whole thing. So what was like the first nugget of Wistful? Where was the first spark of that?
I can tell you exactly. I don't know why I remember this, but exactly. So if you ever read Invincible by Robert Kirkman, the guy who did Walking Dead, wrote a comic book about a superhero. It was like a straight up superhero story, very straightforward, not like, oh, it's all dark and it's like just a really good, meant for adults. It's a cartoon on Amazon Prime, which I highly recommend. The cartoon, the comic is really good. Cartoon, excellent. And the main character, his father is like the Superman of their world. It's not Superman. It's not a DC comic, but it's a Superman equivalent of their world. And his son develops powers, right? Son, and he realized like the first issue he gets powers, and he finds out his dad's actually like a member of an evil galactic empire that's out to like conquer the earth.
Yeah.
So this is all like very early spoilers for Invincible, and so you have this thing where there's this alien race that's like sort of controlling the galaxy, made up of these superpowered beings, but it's a balance of power, right? They're just sort of in charge, but when one of them goes off to Earth and they have kids, like the children have the same powers as the parent in the story, and it bothered me so much. I love everything about this series except this one bit. And it bothered me because I always thought, well, if they could do that, then one of these guys at some point in the last 1,000 years should have flown off to another planet and sired a bunch of children and with a race that's like super fertile and like conquered the galaxy. Why hasn't that? I hate when there's a balance of power. It's like, well, no one ever thought of doing that, Joe. Like, that's a terrible answer for something that's been stable for 1,000 years or whatever. It bugged me. So I'm like, well, how would we twist this and make it different?
Yeah.
So you can have a more stable situation that actually makes sense and doesn't rest on no one ever thought of that. I hate those. It's my grinchiness, right? It's the things that irritate me, make me go off and do, but effectively is fanfic, right?
Yeah.
In a way, Rohan is Invincible fanfic where I tweak the central premise and make my own story out of it. Where I was like, okay, so how would it work? Well, how my aliens, they're not that strong, but their kids are. I like that notion. Right, because I think an interesting parenting dynamic, like, oh, our kids are like superpowered soldiers, but we're tough, but we're not anything like that. So then you have these parents who are like raising their kids in sort of super interesting, manipulative ways, and they have this this monopoly on the military asset in the galaxy, which is their kids, but their kids are not, because they're different. They mate with other species, but when the two different species mate, the kids aren't fertile. So if a hybrid runs off and tries to create an army of his children, he can't. He can't. Like, they can't have kids. So you have this much more stable setup, and it ended up being really, I felt it led to all these interesting stuff.
Yeah.
You start with this one idea, and then if it leads to interesting stuff, maybe you keep it and you write a book about it, which is what I did.
Yeah.
That was it. I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting that the parent, the fathers go around and they have all these kids and they turn them into soldiers and weapons. And then, Rohan breaks free, and it's not exactly clear. I don't want to spoil the book, but he's no longer in the army. He's retired and he's living a quiet life. But it all started as Invincible fanfic in a very oblique way. And the magic system is something I've been tinkering with for like 30 something years, like since playing D&D in college. And, I just trying to get, I have strong feelings about like hard versus soft magic system. We don't have to get into all that, but, so I always have this stuff to pull from. I have these ideas of how my magic system should work. And I've got, stuff I thought of, I got this cool idea 25 years ago, and that's in there. So you do that for enough years and you get a lot of cool ideas, and as long as it all works together, it works together. So.
Well, and you build up a large enough arsenal of things that it's like, oh, well, I need that character I thought of, way back when that didn't fit in this other story suddenly makes a lot more sense, and you get kind of a toolbox you can draw from.
Yeah, and then you come up with ideas like that, and then some are just the fruitful ones that are so much fun. You come up with an idea like, what if this happened, and then if it has ramifications that are interesting.
Yeah.
So, and all the superpowers I try to make really like sort of very straightforward and basic. Someone can make gravity weaker or stronger. Someone can everyone has a little telekinesis. Telekinesis is so useful because it makes you tougher. And if you're not tougher, if you can't resist damage, then everyone's dying all the time. And that's not how superhero stories are meant to be. People need to be tough. They need to be able to take a few bullets to the face and they're okay. That's a superhero story, right? They were just dying in droves, and you're like, whoa. That's a perfectly fine story to write. That's not what I'm doing.
Yeah. So, Andrew wants to know how many. Do we have an answer for that
25,
question?
25.
Really?
No, I have no idea. I have loose ideas for a long-term storyline. Like I have an idea that how Rohan will end up. I have an idea of what the big bad is of the series. There. I have an idea of how I want him to defeat the big bad. All this is sort of in my head. But if I told you I had even a 2-sentence outline for every 25 books, I don't. Because it would almost be wrong, right? I'm going to think of 5 years from now when I'm writing book 12, I'm going to think of something better. Like between now and then that I could think of right now. So I definitely, book 4 is plotted. Book 5 is loose. Yeah.
Speaking of book 4.
Book 4 is plotted. Like I know what's happening in book 4. I know all the major plot twists. I just have to sit down and write it. Book 5, I have a rough idea, of what's going to happen. And then after that, it's very loose. But I have rough ideas of the arc. I need to pay homage to certain properties that I loved. Anyone seen Tower of God? I have a whole arc of books where I'm gonna do Tower of God, which is a manhwa, which I just love. So I have a lot of books planned. Is it going to be 25? I don't really know.
We don't know yet.
I like that idea. Jim Butcher said this in an interview once. It's going to be 25 Dresden books. I didn't even see the interview. Someone told me this. And I'm like, well, if Jim Butcher can do it. That's my dream. I joke because I'm a huge Malazan fan. I used to say, I want to be the Steven Erikson of superheroes, but I'm nothing like Steven Erikson. Like I don't write like, and not just that I'm worse. I'm not like him. I don't write like the way he does. It's not my style. But I want to be the Jim Butcher of superheroes. That's an achievable, maybe not really achievable.
Well, you and I are going to have a chat about Malazan at some point then, because I was not aware of the fact that you were a Malazan fan. So we'll have to chat about that.
I love Malazan. I got into BookTube through Malazan.
Oh, nice.
I was just bored looking on BookTube, and I have definitely seen all the Ninja Scroll stuff. I think Ninja Scroll and Naruto is probably going to be another story, another set of books, rather than Rohan is. Once you're flying through, through spaceships and stuff, you've left Ninja Scroll a little behind in terms of power levels. But I will write a martial arts story at some point that's more Ninja Scroll-y.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that is good stuff. A big Naruto fan too. Who's my favorite secondary character? Do you mean of mine or of? I don't know. I don't really know that I think about it in terms of favorites. My favorite secondary. Everyone says Wei Li. Probably Wei Li.
She's pretty great.
She's she keeps Rohan in line, and she's got all my sarcasm with none of the no filtering necessary. So she's a lot of fun to write.
Yeah.
She can get away with stuff, and she gets some of the better jokes. Ursula gets a lot of good jokes. I don't know how that happened. That's a complete accident.
Well, didn't you say that like the Ursins weren't even supposed to be like a major part of the book?
No, I think when I first planned the story, they were going to show up in whenever they show up, like chapter 1, or chapter 2, and they were going to be like have their thing and then just be dispersed among the station and never show up again. And I kept needing them for stuff. And then they're in like book 3, significantly in book 3, and they're in book 2. I don't know what happened. I just keep sticking them in.
They just keep showing up.
Yeah, they're fun. I get to write my terrible Russian accent, which is probably offensive to some portion of the reading audience. I hope not. But yeah, they're just I don't have a good answer for that. Favorites, yeah, Whaley, manhwas are great. Yes, yeah, I've read a lot of manhwa, a lot of manga, but a lot of manhwa over the years. I go through phases, but there's a lot of good stuff out there and a lot of bad stuff. That's part of my problem. I like a lot of bad stories, like Baki the Grappler. I love. It's terrible. That's my hesitation when I write. I'm like, oh, I'm going to throw this thing that I love in there. Wait, is this just bad or is it like good? And I can't tell. And I have to. That was what happened with Wistful Ascending. And I released it. I'm like, is anyone else going to like this? I have no idea. And it was when people did like it who weren't just science fiction fans. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I have something here. So.
Yep.
All right.
You have a fan, I think, that will read as many Rohan books as you choose to write.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. I'll keep turning them out, I promise.
Let's see. More Naruto. Yeah, Naruto is one. Sarah and I grew up with Naruto also. And
you make me feel very old.
Well, grow up. I mean, I know I'm younger than you, but mid to late high school. So grow up might be a little bit.
Naruto is some of my favorite fight scenes. Everyone needs to read like the first 10 volumes of Naruto for the fight scenes because they can not, it's such a nice contrast to something like Dragon Ball Z, which is, oh, my power level's higher, I'm going to beat you now. And it's very right? You go to Naruto and there's like strategy and there's character development in every fight in the first like 10 or 15 volumes. And it gets away from that later on. But those fight scenes are amazing because they're telling you something about who the characters are as people. I'm like babbling about my love of Naruto. I'm sorry.
That's totally fine. I asked you about your influences, so that's totally valid.
I was on there, and I always my fight scenes are always attempting to show something about who the people are by what kind of moves they're making in the fight. Which some readers just say, "Oh, I just skimmed those." I'm like, "Oh,
no." Action scenes make or break books for me. I'm not even joking. Like,
a lot of readers
I'm so picky.
Which is fine. All kidding aside, it's fine if you want to skim the action scene, but I always try to say something with the action scene. Like this guy's losing his temper, and that's why they're doing the things they're doing, and that's why that's the consequences it has. I always try to have Rohan win by being smarter than other people and more collected. You're like Whaley, thank you.
We got Whaley fans.
Yeah.
I'm going to quickly mention this one, Leslie, and we'll move on. But yes. Ursula, the Ursins actually, to be honest, every time they showed up, I was like, something is going to happen that is going to be very entertaining in about 5 seconds here.
I had to drop a whole storyline for that the Ursins had that my first editor made me drop, and she was absolutely right because it didn't work with the flow of the story. But the Ursins, so it's canonical. I'm going to say it happened even though it never happened in the text. That they choose mates by the women choose, and the men don't really have a choice. And women had decided that Rohan was going to be a good mate because he's war chief, and why not? And they were going to have they were basically all going to have a big wrestling tournament where they were going to fight over who got to be his wife. And he was, of course, saying this isn't a good idea, and everyone was just saying, relax, they'll be fine, they'll be very gentle with you. And you don't understand that this isn't a good I'm not fertile, I can't have. They're like, we know you're scared, it's okay, just calm down. And it was a whole thing, a whole chapter like this, and I had to cut it. I was very sad about that.
Those editors, man.
She did that, and then my editor made me put an info dump in like chapter 1 that I never wanted in there, and I still think I need it, but it broke my heart. I don't like info dumps. If you've read the book, right? So I don't like just telling you stuff like, oh, but then he's got this. But she's like, my editor, like, well, who is this empire, and what are these people like? And I'm like, she's like, you got to put this earlier. I'm like, do I? So I did.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
So with that, do you consider yourself more of a planner writer, or are you more of a pantser discovery writer?
Yeah, I'm more of a planner. I don't have an outline. I have to know where, if I pants a story, if I pants a novel, I get through one chapter and I'm done. I've done this many times. Like if I don't know where it's ending, and if I have a pretty strong idea of what the middle is going to be like, I can't write it. Like I can't. I need the outline first before I write even one sentence. I can't even write like a sample paragraph. I have to have a pretty good idea what happens. I'm also because you may not realize it when you read it, but like I'm pretty careful about like timelines, and like if someone's doing something on day 4 and they don't show up till day 6, I can tell you what they were doing for those 2 days. Otherwise, it would annoy me. I don't know if readers care, but it would really bother me. I'm like, well, why did this guy wait 2 days to come back and do that? Well, I know why, right? I have it in an outline, so I need all that stuff done before. I mean, but there's always stuff. I think everyone pantses on
to some degree.
Right? Yeah. You never write an outline and then follow it word for exactly, and then don't add anything. Right? Like whole species I'll just make up on the spot. I'm like, oh, he's passing 2 guys in the hallway. They're janitors. What species? I'll just make it up while I'm writing, because you got to do that. And sometimes you'll take those elements will play out. You'll take that thing you made up on the spot. You'll use it somewhere, which is fine. As a writer, that's part of the fun. So I do that, but for the most part, like structurally, it's almost entirely planned. Blood Reunion, especially the 3rd book, was very strictly planned, and really hard to write because of that. But my first draft was really clean.
Yeah,
I had a really carefully laid out plan, and I wrote it. And the first draft is very close to the one I released. But I really edited carefully as I went along. But no, I'm definitely on the planner side.
Okay. So we talked about this a little bit prior to going live, and I would love to rehash a little bit of this conversation, because I have heard you talk a little bit about your philosophy on hero characters and what you wanted Rohan to be as a hero. And I would love for you to share a little bit of that, because I think it's something that in fantasy, like we've kind of gotten used to a very specific type of hero, I think. And I think Rohan, like you were talking a little about, we've got this really tortured, like, always has the really tragic backstory and that and the other thing, which, Rohan's got his baggage for sure, but like he feels like a very different, in a good way, hero than a lot of the main characters that I've read in the last couple of years here.
Yeah, he's not. Sorry, I'm trying to think exactly how to phrase it. I don't. Nothing against anyone who writes it that way, but I'm not really a fan of like the grimdark characters or the torture characters, because at some level, if someone's just tortured and feeling so horrible about their life and everything they've done and they're going on, I just want to slap them, and I don't mean in real life. I'm not trying to say anything about people who have actual like mental health issues, but I don't want to read a book about someone just like drinking themselves to death because they can't cope with what they've and you see it in movies. We were talking about, I think it was before we started hearing about John Wick, and down on himself and just like depressed, and I'm like, his wife, his wife died, sure, but I wanted something a little more aspirational.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted a character who's more like, I would want to be like this guy, right? I would tell my kids, like if my son said, Dad, how should I react to this situation? You should do something more like what Rohan does. Rohan makes mistakes, he makes mistakes. But when he makes a mistake, he's going to try to make up for it afterwards. He's going to feel bad, but he's not going to kill himself over feeling. He's not going to sit there and feel bad and like cry and become a useless heap and wail away in the corner about how terrible he is. And it's a choice you're making as a writer, and it's people will defend you can defend a different kind of hero in 2 ways, right? You can say, I think this is more entertaining to write about the guy who's like tortured, and that's great. If that's the kind of story you want to write, you think that's more entertaining, that's fine. But people say, oh, it's more realistic, and I'm like, nothing in here is realistic. I mean, he's flying through space and he's punching giant sharks. Like. Realistic's not a good excuse. If you think it makes a better story, that I have no problem with someone doing that, and I endorse it by all means. But my idea for the story was something. I think aspirational is my favorite word. I don't know if it's exactly the right word, but I'm going to stick to it for now. Rohan is. I'm going to give you an analogy. Did you ever read Lone Wolf and Cub?
I don't think so.
Okay, Lone Wolf and Cub. We should have all heard of Lone Wolf and Cub. It's a very famous manga. Swordsman with the baby cart.
Yeah. Yep.
Kid in a baby cart. And what's really interesting is he's got a whole way he acts in that series is sort of like he's like the personification of a certain kind of like code of behavior related to this. It wasn't really used by the samurai when they really existed. It was sort of afterwards, but it was the author trying to portray this idealized version of how you would behave in these incredibly trying circumstances. This
Right.
it was idealized behavior. He would do stuff that seemed really weird to a modern reader, like
Right.
he had no shame. He would do things that were very embarrassing, and he didn't care because he was totally focused on achieving his goal of revenge or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was idealized behavior. It was like, this is the best way to be, or a certain way to be. And to me, that's what Rohan is. I'm trying to say, like, this is the morality. It's like an ethics textbook. I was a philosophy major. I did an ABD in philosophy. I can write an ethics textbook. It's going to make it more fun, you know.
You're right.
Put it in space with bears. If I'm an ethics textbook, and you know, I try to put him in these trying situations. And again, part of that is he screws up sometimes, but then you have what does he do after he screws up? Because we're all going to screw up, right? We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do stupid things. And he does. I try to have him do different stupid things in every book. So that's my promise, right? You also should not, I hope, see him learning the same lessons over and over again.
Right.
That's another pet peeve of mine. Like every episode of Frasier, we're like, oh, Frasier learned his lesson in this episode. No, he didn't. Same dumb stuff.
It's the formulaic, like repeat. Yeah.
Well, that's where I'm trying to deviate from what comic books do.
Right.
Oh,
hey, Chris. This is something I'm actually gonna chat about next, so it's fortuitous timing. Comment. The design. I've always loved the idea of objects, and I know that's super offensive. Sorry, Wistful, being sentient, but I love that the spaceships in this story are sentient, and I that was one of my favorite world building pieces of Wistful, actually. Like, I think Wistful for me is right up there with Whaley as far as a secondary character, because I just found her super mysterious and fascinating. So designing sentient spaceships, how is that similar or different than designing a human or humanoid character?
It's a great question. I'm really glad you asked, and I'm really glad you told me before the interview. I was like, how is it different? And I thought about it for like a while, and I had a couple margaritas, and I figured it out.
Awesome.
I'm sober now, unfortunately. But okay, so first of all, I had to have artificial intelligences for the way my magic system works. Big ships have to be, and space stations have to be, have souls, or else they're just vulnerable to magic. So that's where it came from. Right. But then once you're writing it, you know, every living thing, you know, you're governed by evolutionary biology. Okay, like all your personality characteristics, anything you like or don't like about yourself is there, all your drives, you know, on a very basic level, because without them, one of your ancestors, some of them would have died in a cave. Like if you didn't get hungry, they would forget to eat and they would have died in a cave, and you wouldn't be here, right? So you know, all living things are going to have to follow like certain very strict parameters. Like most people didn't have desire to mate. Their ancestors would have died in caves, or not died in caves, but not had kids, right? So an artificial intelligence is not, they don't have ancestors in caves. They're built. So they're wired by, so then instead of evolutionary biology being what gives them their fundamental drives, it's what did the person who, you know, wired them up want to be their fundamental drives? And they don't have to be anything like what a living thing has to have, because they can just be, you know, programmed basically to have different. So what do you want ships to be? Well, you know, I gave myself a little leeway. I was like, okay, well, for the ships to really have personality, they're going to develop personalities, they're going to develop senses of humor or something. And I came up with the idea of having some of them be developmentally different, like some of them act like kids, some of them act like adults. Right. I don't know where I got that from. I think I made that up on the spot. I thought it'd be. I think Insatiable. I just wrote her, and I was sitting there writing, and I pantsed her, and I was like, it'd be funny if she was just like totally inappropriate. That would just be funny.
No filter.
No reason for it. Doesn't serve any purpose in the plot. I just made
Yep.
it anyway, and it was funny. I thought it was funny, so I kept it. But they don't have to. So their drives aren't the same as ours. They don't have to have a drive for self-preservation. I think they would have to. It would make sense for me that they all have a drive for service, which
Yeah.
is a little creepy. And I get that it's a little creepy, and I'm trying to stay away from that because you don't want to take that too far. This like you don't want female robots with the desire to serve running around. Like I'm not doing that. But the ships, they want to do stuff like because they're wired that way. Because if you were going to build an artificial intelligence cargo ship, your first thing you'd want to let's make sure they like hauling cargo,
right?
Because if they didn't, this is a giant waste of money, right? Like what does our station want? And there, I don't want to say too much about Wistful wants because that's spoilers for book 3.
Well, you just hooked me into book 3 with that sentence because I like Wistful. I want to know.
Wistful is not a big part of book 2. Unfortunately, book 2, Rohan goes back to Earth.
Right.
Almost, there's scenes on Wistful, but very few. And it's a whole different set of characters and a whole different, surroundings. And it's my vision of future Earth in this alternate, world where they have alien technology and stuff. But then book 3 is back on Wistful.
Okay.
We learn a lot more about Wistful and about her place in the global's the wrong word.
Universal.
Yeah. Galactic scheme of things, where people came from, because I really like deep histories.
Yeah.
When there's, I like when, actually, like this was all set up by the secret society from 10,000 years ago. I don't think that's true. I don't think our world really works that way, but I love those in stories.
Yeah. Well, I loved a lot how Wistful feels mysterious and ancient, but is still learning things. Like that was a really interesting part to her that I thought was like, I just really enjoyed every little bit I got from her. I was like, ooh, like trying to figure her out a little bit more. And her relationship with Rohan is I think really, really interesting. And even though I love Whaley and Rohan's friendship, his relationship with Wistful is also, I think, very interesting and has a lot of pretty awesome dynamics through the book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, he has to be attached to her on some level because otherwise he'd have left. It's like the D&D campaign where the character's like, I don't want to go into the dungeon. Well, we're done. Let's all go home. He would have left. So I needed him to be somewhat attached to her, and a lot came out of that, and then a lot just came out of I just wanted to put him. I want to put him in a cool place.
Yeah.
I grew up in New York, and one of the things I like about New York, and not saying New York's the best place on earth or anything, but I like that it's very cosmopolitan. You can go around New York and just see just a tremendous diversity. It's an everyday occurrence, and I like that. I just it's aesthetically. So I'm like, let's make Wistful very diverse, because why not? Because I can. I'm writing it. No one can stop me.
That's the fun part about writing, and writing specifically sci-fi and fantasy, is that you get to make it all up.
Yeah, and it helps if you can justify it, which I can, because she's a space station and she's welcoming, and I'm like, I can make her welcoming, or or very like people do these space stations where like it's a very harsh economy, and I'm like, no, let's have an economy of abundance where everyone has plenty of food and people work because they get bored if they don't, but not because they're about on the edge of like starving to death,
right?
Because I can, and it's a 50,000-year-old at least space station. Who knows? You can postulate anything in terms of the technological advancement. Someone can say, "How could they possibly grow enough food?" I'm like, "Well, it's 50,000 years."
Yeah, she's perfected the art. Yeah.
So,
Melissa.
A lot of fun to write. Thank you, Melissa.
Working her way through Wistful.
That's sweet. Yeah, book 2 is about giant sharks, which I don't know why I did that. This is one of those things. I got the idea for it, and I'm like, this is fantastic, and I just went with it, and I never looked back, and it was probably so dumb. It's an enormous universe. Yeah, there's very loosely 400 million years of backstory going on, very loosely. I mean, you don't plot it out to the year. But there are, everything's there for a reason. The I have answers to a lot of people's questions that I can't give you. like people sometimes get annoyed about like, why are the Ildrak this way? And I'm like, there's a reason.
Yep.
Let me just tell you.
Keep reading.
I don't know yet. But, and it's just something I wrestle with a lot, because it's like, how do you get people to trust you as an author?
Right.
Like I'm telling you, you don't know me. You don't know if I just did this and it's dumb, or if I actually have a reason for it.
Right.
Why they're the way they are. Like why does the Ildrak power work the way it does? There's a reason. Like I know what it is. They're gonna explain it in one book one day. They're gonna like actually say, oh, this is exactly why it was done this way. But you don't, as a reader, people are like, this is just crazy and dumb. And I'm like, no, there's a reason. Just give me a chance.
Trust me. It makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah. That's my friend Andrew Savage, is a part of ZZ Adams, who write some lovely science fiction novels.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. The little boy from Book.
I want to know about this too.
Never getting his battle gauntlet, because he would tear apart the apartment, and you do not want his mom mad at you, because something really bad would happen if she were. So, and he's never getting his battle. He's going to have to settle for the Frisbee.
Well, and that's the hard part. Being a mom, your first thought would be like, well, you just give him one that doesn't actually work. You don't want to do that. Better to not give it to him at all.
Now I'll have to do that in a future book, and I'll have to put you in my acknowledgments.
That would be hilarious if Rohan's like, I'll give him the safe version.
Yeah.
And Rinth is like, what is this crap?
You're not old enough for this. I'm gonna pull that card. But like used to have toys, like little robots that would actually shoot little projectiles, and kids kept choking to death on them. And I'm like, look, it's evolution. It's sometimes that's supposed to happen. No, so they made them stop shooting. Right? This is the equivalent. Right. I think of a war gauntlet, but with a little plastic pellets don't shoot out. Yeah. No, I don't really plan on ever giving.
We had all sorts of dangerous stuff when, I don't know.
Oh yeah, they used to give us broken glass and concrete. Go play in the park.
Right.
Monkey bars with no mat under them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Metal slides.
Oh, good stuff. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Yeah. That was a total joke. Canadian. I totally pantsed. Because this joke that Canadians are. He's talking to, I think, Marion Stone, and she's like, "You're very polite. What are you, Canadian?" And he's like, "Actually, yes."
Actually, yeah.
Which is a great line. I love that, but I don't think I planned it beforehand.
Well, and it's funny because in our small author community, there are quite a few readers and authors that are Canadian, so I'm sure that fits in quite nicely.
The stereotype is that Canadians are nicer and more polite than Americans, and I don't know if that's really true. I'm sure.
You've met Kay.
Yes.
Kay single-handedly proves that.
Okay. Well, Kay proves that on average they must be, right? Because Kay is bringing that number up, even if the rest of Canada is not.
Yep.
And every Canadian I met, I just want to say up front, is lovely. I'm not trying to cast any dispersion of a whole country after me. But this book isn't really about Brazilian character Wenjo. I'll have to come up with one. I have read Zero Twist, Tiago, because actually the bad guys are all based on the Gracie family. It's an MMA story. Zero Twist, my free short, which is my take on I had to have a martial art tournament story somewhere in my life, because you can't have my background and not have a martial art tournament. So I put it in my free short that goes it's like 6 chapters, and they're not really Brazilian, they're aliens, but I don't know. I'll think of something.
I think this is Bo's reaction to Rinth not getting the
gauntlet. The war gauntlet. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll change that. That I think I'm flexible on Rinth.
Oh, DNF's the series for the.
Well, if he's not getting his gauntlet, I'm not reading anymore.
There you go. Andrew has a good idea. Battle Frisbee.
I'll see what I can come up with. I have to do more with Rinth, I think, at some point in the future. I have to figure it out.
Another vote for Canadians being really nice, Melissa.
Yeah. So I made him Canadian. I think it was just for that one joke, and that was it. And then everything else, it worked. So I never had any reason to backtrack it. And then I made him Indian just as an homage to the Lugo movies that I just love, and that were spiritually important for the story. Because a big part of my inspiration here is if you look at like, writing of like fantasy and stuff, I was thinking about this. If you listen like Writing Excuses, which is a podcast for writing,
Yep.
giving advice on how to write books.
Yeah.
And they'll talk about how you have to have like the darkest moments, and you have to like really torture your main character, and things have to get really, really, tense and hard, and you have to think they're going to fail. And it's all about try-fail cycles. They have to fail a lot. And I'm like, it's like a fear cycle has to drive the storyline forward. And I was watching these Telugu movies, Tollywood movies, and not all are like this, but there were a few that were just like, there's no tension. The hero is so competent. You never think for a second they're going to fail. But like, how cool are they going to look winning? How neat is it going to be? What's the method they're going to use? Because you know they're going to win. You have no concern. There's no feeling in your gut. Oh my God, he's in such dire straits. And I thought this drew me into a whole movie. And I'm like, well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And then you can have this fun story where great, cool things happen, and you never have that gut tension where, oh my God, things are so hard, because I don't like that part much. It's my least favorite part of stories, is that dark part where like, oh, things are horrible. So I made him. That's why I made him Indian. That's why I made him a South Indian. That's the only reason. This is, every once in a while someone's like, oh, is this a story about underrepresented people? Like, no, please don't, please don't buy this because you think I'm South Asian, or you're looking for South Asian representation, because like there are plenty of people doing that. Very white dude here, not.
But it's really special to be able to, like you said, put in an homage to things that have really, changed us as people, as readers, and in our lives outside of the books we read and the shows we watch. And that's the power of storytelling, right? Is that it changes us as people.
Absolutely.
Which is really cool.
Find stuff you love and you shove it in your book.
Exactly. Yep. It's funny because I was thinking, this is not scripted, but there was, when you were talking about Kenshin and how Rohan is like Kenshin, and it was making me laugh because I have faint threads of influence of Kenshin in my work as well. And it's just fascinating to me. Like, you take the same source inspiration to completely different storytelling styles and two completely different books / series. And it's amazing to me how everything, it just proves how much storytelling is an individual experience, right? That we all take different pieces from that, and it speaks to different parts of us.
Yeah, it is fast because there's so many facets to a story. And that's one reason I love when reading reviews of my, good reviews of my books. I don't like reading bad reviews, but good reviews, because people take such different things. Like, I'll have people say, it was just so funny.
Yeah.
Like, they're done. And I'm like, okay, I never really set out to write a funny book. That was never my intention. I'm super thrilled someone like read the book and thought it was like funny, and that's what they got, and they enjoyed it. I'm like, if it brought you joy, I'm thrilled. I'm beyond thrilled. But other people are like, man, it was so slice of life. And I'm like, great. I'm thrilled that you enjoyed it as a slice of life story. And then like people are like, oh, I love the romance. Well, not that many people say that they love the romance, but people will mention it as an aside. And I'm like, there's so much, in 100,000 words, so much stuff is happening, and different people just latch on to different parts of it. I'm sure, you and I are picking different pieces out of Kenshin and out of, 100 other influencing properties.
Right. Exactly.
Which I'm sure are some overlap, but not all overlap.
Right.
And tone and everything. And and it all gets poured into it. So it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun to take all the different pieces, and even sometimes most of the time, I would say, sometimes you're conscious of it, and sometimes, like you said, you look at it afterwards and you're like, oh, I see where that came in that part of the story.
I'm almost never like, the invincible thing. I knew what I was doing from the start, right? That hope, that aliens with superpowers and how what they do with their kids and how that affects the balance of power. That was deliberate. Nothing else was deliberate. Nothing else that I say, oh, I want him to be like Kenshin, and this never occurred to me. And afterwards, I'm like, well, clearly this is where I took it from, right? Like, you can't argue. But most of it was not, but that's total normal.
I agree. This is also one of the things that I'd say was most endearing for me about Rohan was the way that he treated Rinth through the book.
Yeah. So there's a thing about like very strong people that, I've done a lot of martial arts in my life. I've been around a lot of very tough people. I'm not one of them, but I've been around them. For the most part, they're very nice and gentle. Partially, I don't know why, but I think part of it is just like they go through life without fear.
Yeah.
Like who's going to be like the biggest bully is someone who's terrified they're going to get beaten up. And once you're like, oh, I'm not going to get beaten up, I'm good. You have no reason to bully anyone. You have no reason to pick a fight. If you're like, hey, I could kick the butt of anyone in this room. You have no reason to fight anyone in the room. Like, why bother? Like, it's just a waste of time. So Rohan to me was an expression of that thought.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's going to go in a room. He's like, I could kill everyone in this room. He knows that. Right. So he has no desire to fight anybody. He's like, I'm just going to kill like Kid, like Aang, when it comes out with guns, he's like, it's annoying.
Yep.
But I'm not actually worried. I'm not actually like, he's not going to have that fear response like that makes you angry, right? Because he doesn't need it.
Right.
For the most, I mean, he runs into situations where he does, but it's very rarely.
Yeah.
So, and of course, I'm a dad. So I have to put in a kid who's going to be annoying and have no filter and and I'm sure there's a little bit of an homage in Rinth to my stepdaughter, who was on my first date with my wife because she couldn't get childcare. We had a date at the last minute, our first date. So her daughter was there just talking constantly the whole date. So I'm like, I'm gonna capture a little bit of that spirit.
Yeah.
And so, but
kids are amazing characters. Honestly, like I think they're underutilized in a lot of fantasy, to be honest, and they're
hard to do right.
They are.
Many people do them wrong, which is why I say they're hard to do right. And I don't know that I'd like Rinth to come back in book 4. I don't really have kids in books 2 and 3, unfortunately, but they're hard. They're hard to do right, and they're often show, and I did that also on purpose a little bit. Usually if there's a kid shows up, they're going to get kidnapped or they're going to run off and bring everyone into danger, because that's what kids usually do in action stories. So I'm like, that's never going to happen. Rinth is never going to like get kidnapped, and he's never going to like run out when they're all hiding from the monster. He's never going to be the one to make a noise.
Yeah.
So on. It's been done too many times.
Yeah. I'm not sure what we said that Andrew was ouch about.
Maybe because I said I'm a dad and I have to put annoying kids in my books.
Maybe.
If my kids cared enough to watch these videos, I might not have said that. But I'm sure they never will.
You never know. Never say never.
True. That's true.
I love
okay. Love you guys.
So
cover myself.
Yeah, really quick.
Sorry.
Hi, Joe's kids. So speaking of dialogue, dialogue is something that I think is such an interesting topic for different writers, because I'm curious, because you write a lot of banter and there is a lot of humor within the book. Do you have a process for that, or do you just kind of off the cuff it? Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I did. One of the guys on Writing Institute is Howard Taylor. He'll do whole like episodes about like how to make a joke.
Yeah.
The process to it. And
yeah.
Like, I have no idea what that is.
No.
Even listening to him talk, I'm like, I don't really understand what he's saying. I'm not saying he's wrong or that he's a bad teacher.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in my brain. No, I just, every human being has a mental representation in your brain of other people, right? You have to. You think about people closest to you, what they're going to say next almost all the time. Right. And if they're like sick or they have like a brain injury and they say something uncharacteristic, you've got this thing in your head that acts like them, like a set of neurons that act like them, that tell you, okay, this is what they'd be doing now. And if they do something different, you notice a discrepancy.
Right.
And characters are the same.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't know if these characters are different people who actually exist, or they're things you made up. Your brain doesn't know if you just imagined this person or if you actually observed them on the outside. It's the same process. So these people all live in my head, and I just have them like joke around with each other.
Yeah.
And they're all telling the same, for the most part. Sometimes I'll try to focus and I'll say, right, Ursula's going to make Ursula's jokes are a little more understated. And sometimes you'll read and you'll be like, this joke should be told by this other person, not by this person. But it's much less crafted than like what Howard Taylor does.
Sure.
We talk about it a lot, and he's really careful and deliberate about what he's doing. And I'm much less. I just read it, and if it sounds right or it doesn't sound right,
yeah,
that, but I never plan a joke. Sometimes I'll say, try to have funny banter here.
Right.
But I'll never think of it ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that's why writing is hard, right? I can't, if you just said like, oh, Joe, you've got to finish 100,000 words in this many days. I can't promise that I can do that, because some days I'll sit down and I'll have a lot of good, for me, or good lines come out, but some days they won't.
Right.
And I think that's why, like, someone who writes very straightforward prose that just sort of tells a story can chunk out X thousand words a day and hit a deadline. But if you're trying to write funny, or you're trying to write like clever, you can't.
Right.
It doesn't always come. But if I was just straightforward describing a story and I had plotted the story out, I could say I can definitely churn out this many words per hour.
Right.
That could be Brandon Sanderson. Well, I could be Brandon. You know what I mean? But there's a reason he's so productive, and his writing style is the way it is. These are not unconnected facts.
Yep, absolutely.
Very straightforward, very lovely writing style that works for a lot of people. Not saying anything negative about Brandon Sanderson, but that's why he can chunk out 10,000 words a day. If he just dedicates himself, he knows he can just keep writing. He knows what the story is going to be because he's a plotter. Just bang it out.
Right.
But I can't bang out funny dialogue.
Right.
I can't. Sometimes I'll sit there and I'll stare at the screen for 2 days, and then there's a process I go through, about titrating my alcohol levels in very careful, blood alcohol levels in very careful ways. A certain number of shots, I get funnier, and then a certain number I get less funny, and I've got to, time it against.
Walk that very fine line.
Very fine line, yeah.
Yeah.
A little science. You got to have some science. So there's science to my dialogue writing, but no craft. It's all chemistry.
Yeah, but it feels very natural. Like, having been in, any of us who've been in a group of friends, that banter sometimes it's off the cuff and just doesn't make any sense. But it's funny and it's random, and you can, like, everybody's got their own style of humor. And so it feels very authentic in the book.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You just gotta. So this is a good question. Thank you, Bo. So why do I have this weird plot structure, which I've used in the first 3 books, which is, I use in all 3 books. And I'm not really giving anything away. We start off, it's sort of like around the beginning of Act 3. So you start off in a moment of crisis that's very close to the end of the book. And then it's like 1,500 words, 2,000 words. And then we go back and it's like 10 days earlier. And that's a really common thing in like TV shows.
Yeah.
And like I don't know which TV shows, but I'm sure I've seen it. I didn't invent this, right? It's very common in like movies and TV shows. And I think I did it in the first book because I felt the early parts of the book were a little slow. And I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to speed up a little bit. I wanted something to give you, what Brandon Sanderson calls the promises and payoffs.
Mm-hmm.
What's your setting? Very beginning, you want to say, this is going to have jokes. It's going to have banter. It's a science fiction. Very first scene, he's in space. He's wearing a space mask. He's getting, he doesn't have a spacesuit on, so there's superpowers. Like, so many of the elements are in the first like 200 words.
Yep.
I'm telling you right up front, what you're in for, because I think that's super important. I think, writers, we like to be clever. Oh, you're gonna think you're reading a romance, and then 2/3 of the way through, it's really a murder mystery. Readers don't want that. Tell them up front what you're doing, and then.
Right.
And then once I did it in book 1, I was like, well, I have to repeat it because I'm a little, I don't want to say OCD, but I have like a compulsion to make things like symmetrical.
Yeah.
Like my proudest thing is if you read the 3 books, and then look back, they're all within 1,000 or 2,000 words of each other.
That's insane.
Right. Like that was the dumbest thing I ever committed to in my life, but I did it. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if they were all the same length so that when you put them on the shelf, they all look even and almost, they're not the same number of pages because I couldn't get the pages to work, but like, that's a level of compulsion. So the level of compulsion went to structure. And I'm like, I like the way it worked in the first book. And I've definitely had one reader who just said, stop doing that, Joe. It's stupid. So I'm open to suggestions for the 4th book because I have an idea of how to do it because it constrains your storytelling. You have to have a moment towards the end that you can put in the beginning, and it's not going to be obvious how you get there. Because if you notice in Wistful Ascending, he starts off in a fight with 3 people. You don't really see them again until really late in the book.
Right.
You really don't know. But I wanted to give the reader something to pull them through. Like, how did he get there?
Yeah.
and you'd be curious. And that's one of, and to me, books are about, questions and answers. You got to read 3 questions, answer 2 of them. Raise 3, answer 2. Raise 3, answer 2. At the end of the book, you reverse it. The answer 3, raise 2, answer 3. So you close them all at the end, or most of them. I don't really count the questions. That's just the idea.
Right.
Right away, I'm giving you questions at the beginning. Who are these people? Why are they trying to kill this dude? Why is he okay with that? And how's he going to get out of there? Right away. And hopefully, if there's a slow part in chapter 8, you're like, well, I still want to know, and hopefully you read chapter 9 or what. I don't know. I don't know if chapter 8 is slow. I don't remember exactly. But I'm trying to make the reader not want to put the book down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So right away, I'm giving you a bunch of questions, and hopefully you care.
Yeah.
And I also really wanted to show him. I feel like if you didn't have that opening scene in Wistful Ascending where he's getting beaten up, it would feel like he's too overpowered for the rest of the series. Because then if you look in most of the rest of that book, he's not really in a lot of personal danger because he's supposed to be one of the toughest people around. So right away I'm saying he's one of the toughest, but he's not the toughest, and he can be beaten up. So I felt that was important.
Yeah.
Well, that was basically it. But I'm really not sure I'm going to do it for book 4. Part of me really wants to, but it's that compulsive part.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm waiting. Definitely had one reader who's like, just stop. I hate it. I'm like, I'm sorry. Slow chapter 8 specifically.
Chapter 8's got to be.
Yeah, I'll have to go. I just rewrote the whole book. I'm not doing that again for a long time. That's what I did this week. I fixed all my. I fixed many of not all, many of the typos and echoes and stuff, and republished the book. So.
Doing the real hard work of writing.
Well, I wrote something I really had no idea what I was doing, and then I released it, and then I spent a year learning what I was doing more, right? Taking classes, hiring an editor, all that stuff, and then I re-released it, and I still, I feel like on a sentence level, I'm much better at like picking words than I was 2 years ago, because if you did it this much and you didn't get better, there'd have to be something wrong with you. So when I look at Wistful Ascending, I'm like, oh, there's some bad sentences in here. I got to fix that because I'm writing a series, right? I mean, I don't plan to leave the series for a really long time. So hopefully people are always going to be picking up Wistful Ascending for the next 10 years. Like years, that's the first book. So I can't just say, well, I can't just say it's the trilogy I wrote when I was young, but really start with this new good stuff and whatever. I can't, because I'm not going to have a whole different series to start with. So So that book has to stay good enough that people don't go, what? Why would I read book 2?
Right. So this is getting a lot of attention in the chat.
The chest hair?
Yeah, from Rohan's in this about the story. There's an obsession.
Almost everything okay. So everything in Rohan's life and in his personality is loosely autobiographical. I'm not going to say anymore. Okay. So I mean, like Rohan's quest for redemption, his whole thing. I did bad things. Like I never committed genocide, right? I never murdered anybody. I never even like kind of a fist fight. But I did jerky things in my past, and his quest to like become a better person is a lot about a reflection of my feeling that I was a jerk in high school, and I try to be nicer to people now than I was because I hurt people's feelings when I was younger. And
didn't we all?
No, I'm not unique, or I'm not trying to pretend I'm some special case. But I'm very sort of aware and like self-reflective about I was a jerk. I think back to some people I know in college. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that or did that. And again, nothing serious, right?
Yeah.
Rohan's done more serious things, but it's metaphorically, it's all my journey. And Rohan has had women who are interested in his chest hair. You can reach your own conclusions.
That was my guess. Just wanted to clarify for the chat since they were all.
Rohan's relationship with Tamerlane owes a lot to my relationship with my wife. So I'm on my second marriage. So this is my wife and I had started dating in our 40s. And there's a different kind of relationship you have when you've already had kids and you're in your 40s, and again, nothing special about it in the sense that we're not unique, but so there were a lot of parallels. A lot of not parallels. Oh, my wife's father is a lovely, lovely human.
Immediate yeah, we needed that clarification.
Because I'm like, there are parallels, but they're also really not. So I'm like, your dad, father.
So we've had an apology to the kids. Now we need an apology to the father-in-law.
I'm so sorry. You are a lovely. He's really a lovely man. And my wife's family couldn't be nicer to me. So that part's not autobiographical, but that twist to Marilyn's family. But but just her, it just seemed like like her being attracted to, I mean, fundamentally he meets a woman, and like he's a good looking guy, and she's an attractive woman, and that's how people start relationships when they're adults. Like, you're just like, oh, hey, should we have coffee? And that's really what happens. Like, it's not and then and then the rest of it was just trying to meet, and then him just obsessing about it afterwards is just the awkward teenager in Rohan, which is just funny. I just put that in because I thought it would be funny, and people hopefully found it funny.
You're welcome, Andrew. Also, I am pretty sure that like a third of the chat is Andrew at this point, which is hilarious. There's a lot of Andrews in this chat.
That is funny.
Wizard, I will never ask you that. You can show up every time.
No. That is funny. I know a lot of Andrews in the book community right now.
I do too.
I didn't really put that together until this second, like just how many. And AR is an Andrew, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, Andy. Yeah, Andy with him. Yeah.
Yeah. He's always as AR in the username. It's always AR.
Yep.
But yeah, Legend of Blackjack, great book. Go read it. Little plug.
Yeah. It is a very good book, and I haven't even read it yet. It's so funny. Like, everybody I know is like on their seats, like, Tori, have you read this book yet? This is like a book for you. Read it.
It's a ton of fun.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of good stuff.
So yeah, let's see.
I know a lot of Andrews.
Yeah, it's really funny now that my book Phased has been on Twitter a little bit. Yeah. I have my full name on it, and everybody's like, wait, your name is Victoria?
I was one of them tweeting you. I'm like, who's this Victoria person? Yep. Sister? Cousin?
Me. Totally fits, right? Even funny story, and totally not on the right topic, but when I was little, my best friend's name was Elizabeth. Not even joking. So everybody called us the Queens. And we were, Victoria and Elizabeth. It was pretty great.
The Queens.
Yes. See, yep. I will, guys. I promise. Have you seen my TBR? I'm trying.
Yeah. The TBR size is a real problem.
That would be hilarious. I'm here for it. Let's do it.
To the other Andrew. Get them all like a.
And I will just refer to them all as Andrew the entire time, and we'll see how chaotic that gets.
Let them guess. Relationship.
There you go. You should write a Rohan's dating advice novella for us.
Learn to fly. He doesn't. Well, what you want dating advice from Rohan? Like, he never gets the girl. Like, yeah.
Well, it's technically from Rohan, but you could just throw your authorial voice in there.
Yeah. I have my relationship tip, which is be a man and then get older, and the very I mean, it's not right, but in our society, if you're a man, women you date younger women, and the other way is rare. So if you're a guy and you're like not the most popular kid in high school, if you turn 40 and you can hold down a job and show up on time, you're like a unicorn. It's the standards are so much lower. It's terrible. I mean, I'm not saying it's not fair to women that this is true, but the truth is, women, when they hit their 30s and 40s, their standards plummet dramatically. Like, you don't need a six pack, or like chiseled cheekbones anymore. If you're like control all the time and like and benefits. If you're American, man, I have really good health insurance and dental insurance, and my wife, I've never seen her so into me as when she realized that my job would pay for like her kids' glasses, like entirely. Oh my God, it's the most romantic moment of our relationship. So if you can get a really good benefits package, like universal healthcare is just going to ruin my dating game if that ever happens. But luckily it won't. So That's my relationship advice. I don't know what it's like in Brazil. Probably totally different.
Yeah, Thiago. I don't know. Thiago? I'm trying to remember if this was on our interview. I'll leave him alone. I won't be mean to him. I was gonna say we could have this is gonna turn on to my channel. We'll just have like different authors giving romantic advice on my channel from now on. It'll be a new series. Yeah, guys, that's the new series coming to my channel. Surprise, spoilers.
You need a jingle and like some kind of background, like hearts and stars or something.
Yeah.
Advice from all the indie authors. I don't know who would watch it, but it's a thing. Yeah.
So, okay. Well, one question that I want to make sure we get to is I know that, and you've kind of alluded to this already, but that music is a really big inspiration for you. And while you were writing, what kind of music were you listening to? And is there a Spotify playlist?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I fell in love with Bollywood movies a few years ago, not that long in the grand, and no, not because of my wife, totally independently of my wife's from Bangladesh. She was born here, but her family's from Bangladesh. But it's not because of her. Her whole family's into Bollywood movies. They're not the ones who got me hooked. I got hooked on my own. So I listen to a lot of Bollywood music. I really love like Indian pop music. I love it. I don't know why. It's just it's all dance tunes and Indian, like the stuff it's what Indian people listen to, like the most popular, like the equivalent of top 40, whatever.
Yeah.
The stuff from the movie soundtracks. I love that stuff. So I like listening to it when I write because I can't understand the lyrics. So the lyrics don't pull me and affect my. It's like as far as because I don't, I speak. I know some words of Hindi, but I don't speak Hindi, or any of the other Indian languages. So I listen to that stuff all the time, and I put all of it on my own playlist, and I just call it Rohan's work playlist because I imagine this is what he's listening. This is exactly what he would be listening to when he's like out in space towing ships, and he's got to listen to some tunes. So he's playing. So there's a Spotify playlist of which is just my favorite songs, and I'm sure there's some stuff on there that's not as good, and some songs I like that aren't on there, but it's pretty close. But I just love it. They're all dance tunes, and they're all the not being in English really helps. Because I feel like when I listen to a song where I understand the lyrics, I start pulling me into the song, into the feelings of the song. But if I listen to dance music where I can't understand a word of it, I'm not distracted from my writing. I just pick some more, I'm a little more energy, and I write my fight scene, and I got the beat going on, and I can dance in my chair. But no words are going to pull me into like, insert themselves into my dialogue.
Right.
So that's what I listen to mostly. I'm a big 80s music fan, a big Prince fan other times, but mostly what I listen to is Bollywood music. And, I don't know. So
it's really cool because I know a lot of authors will say like don't listen to anything with lyrics when you write for that exact reason. I have the same problem to some degree. I listen to a lot of Korean music for the same reason because I understand some of it, but not enough to, throw me off with writing.
Are you BTS Army? Was that it?
That was my gateway, but that is not my current. No. It is funny though. I do appreciate a lot of their earlier music though.
I haven't listened to much of it. I'm nothing against it.
I'll send you a playlist. Okay. I've been slowly working through Rohan's, and I've been really enjoying it because when I was in college, I had some friends that were really into Bollywood movies.
Oh, that's great.
So it was fun to kind of have that little bit of nostalgia of going back and doing that.
That's cool. I had no idea like how amazing the Indian film industry was until like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Or something, and I literally was just bored and Netflixing.
Yeah.
Like that's how it started. Like they're like, oh, would you like to watch Krish? And I'm like, what is this? And it was like, it's hugely, it's like, he's like a bigger star than like any American, but huge star. And I'm like, I never heard of this guy because I'm an American. I don't hear about anything that's outside my little bubble of culture. I'm like, oh, this movie's kind of cool. And then it's like, oh, would you like to watch another one? I'm like, well, why not? I must have been really bored, but
that's how it starts.
I got hooked fast, and now I watched a lot. And we could have a whole discussion about the difference between like South Indian movies and North Indian movies.
I'm sure. Yeah.
There's a reason I say that Rohan is more Tollywood inspired. I don't say Bollywood inspired. Those are the specific films that really gave me some of those that I pulled some things from. Although the romance in Rohan is definitely pulled more from a Bollywood movie, especially the way it ends, which is a sort of a riff on how a number of Bollywood movies have ended. I can't remember the names, but it's all an homage to something. Like I told you, the things I love, I shove them in the book, and try to get them all to work together. So, yeah.
Sorry, my kitten is sticking his face in the light behind my computer, and he's going to burn his nose. And
I'm allergic to cats, but I don't want them burned.
No, he's a menace. He's very cute, and that's the only reason he isn't a pair of slippers.
Okay.
He's a fun cat.
I like cats. I just can't have them.
Yeah.
Allergies,
We named him Pippin, and then we realized that maybe we should have chosen a name that didn't encourage him to such trouble. But yeah, he's a good cat. So anyways, my last question for you is, other than 25 books, what is the plan for the series, and what other projects are you working on, if any?
25 books. So there's 25 books. I don't have, so I want to write the 25 books, and then I got an idea for a side project that I've been working on the last couple months, and it's a wuxia thriller, sort of the movie Taken.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine Taken starred Michelle Yeoh instead of Liam Neeson and was set on Cradle. That's my pitch. And the reason I started writing, first of all, I got this idea for a character and a storyline, and it's very over the top. And you read it, Tori, didn't you?
Yeah, I read the beginning that you had sent out. Yeah,
you read the first 4 chapters. So I was working on that, and I took a break to rewrite Wistful Ascending, which I just finished, and now I'm going back to that, and I want to finish that. And I'm not sure if it's going to turn out good or not, which is the same thing I told you when I asked you to read the first 4 chapters, because it's got a different tone. But I wanted to write a more fantasy. I wanted to leave the superhero stuff behind. So I want to test the waters with marketing. Maybe throw it in Spiffbo if I can finish it and get it cleaned up. Because otherwise I can't enter Spiffbo or Space Fic. Sorry, that's a proper pronunciation of Space Fic. Not Space Fic. I'm getting in a fight over this sooner or later. I can't enter any more other books in those contests because they only take book 1.
Right.
So this was a side project that I'm probably gonna finish at some point. I'm gonna work on it next. I want to finish it. I know how it ends, so I have a plot and everything. And that has a dog. So there's a dog.
There we go. Katie has.
Really concerned about the dog. Yeah. Stuff will happen to the dog. So nothing too well. We'll see. So that's my side project, and I have a lot more stories I want to tell about Rohan and about the universe. I have a lot of backstory and 3 books in, and thank you, Jess. 3 books in, and you only have a clue who the big bad is, right? So you want to get there. I want to unfold it. It's these stories that I loved when I was a kid. Like I read Stephen Bruce Jerrick's story novels. I don't know if
right.
Right, like these long series of standalones where there's this things happening.
Yeah.
Over the course of I love that so much. I want to do it. I feel like a broken record, right? These things that I love, I'm going to throw them in there, but you can't do that in one book, right? The definition, you have to write 12 or 20 books to tell a story like that. So that's my dream.
Yeah.
That's my dream, to write more. And then if I throw this my wuxia thriller, that comes out and gets me some readers, or doesn't get me some readers, and it's just a fun thing to have done.
Yeah.
I think I needed a mental break after releasing Blood Reunion, and then I was stressing myself out about sales and stuff, which isn't my own fault, just being dumb. And I was like, I got to do something different, setting low pressure. And there's pressure with a series, right? Like every book has to be good on its own. It has to develop the series the right amount, and not too much and not too little. You have to have character development that makes sense in the context of the book before and after. The pressure builds.
Yeah.
like unless you're writing the same book over and over again, like or like a pulp,
Right.
where you're writing the same story, it's just another story about the same people. If you're actually going to have character development from book to book, that makes sense. It's really hard, like
Yeah.
a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure when I wrote Blood Reunion to like get all those elements to play through, not have too much humor, not have too little, keep the tone consistent with the first two. So I'm whining, but
well, I think it's really smart as a writer to have, I mean, we do that as readers, right? Like I like palate cleansers in between all of these giant fantasy books that I read. And I think that helps you keep it exciting and, exposes you to new ideas and trying new things. So it makes a lot of sense that, I mean, I do that. I like to, not necessarily go every other one, but like you said, after you get through however many books in the series you're doing, you need a little bit of I need a brain break.
Yeah, so I'll finish the book whose name I haven't finalized, but Wuxia Thriller, Angry Wuxia Mom, is the not the real title, but that's what I always call it, Angry Wuxia Mom. So and that has a dog, so I feel like that's gonna be a hit with readers because you can't go wrong with a pet dog, and even though he doesn't do much that's useful, so we'll see. Yep. But I don't have a lot of big plans for that series. I mean, I might write more books than that, but I'm not thinking that far ahead. I need to finish that book and then write book 4 of the Hybrid Helix, and then I really need to sit down and figure out exactly how book 5 is going to go because I don't have all that hammered out.
Yeah.
And, just keep going.
Yep.
Just keep going. Which is it's a fun. It's a blast.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a blast. So.
Well, I am really excited to see. I am looking forward to reading book 2 and book 3, and I want to wish you all the best with this series. I think that Wistful is a really awesome. It has so many awesome elements to it that I think science fiction and fantasy really need, and it's awesome. And I really enjoyed reading it, and I really want to thank you for being willing to come on and talk about your book and your process on my channel.
Thank you so much, Tori. It's been an honor and a pleasure. I love this stuff. Thanks for reading the book.
Oh yeah.
I'm thrilled that anyone reads it. Even more thrilled when they like it. But I know it's another superhero. He's a guy, and people get.
I was here for it.
Okay.
See, that's so funny because I know you mentioned that sometimes superhero can be either, can be a turnoff for some people, or it can be something where people are like not really sure. And I was looking for something very different than what I've been reading. So to me, that was an immediate like, okay, like, and knowing you, it's like, I know it's probably going to be funny. And even though it isn't a comedy, it is very funny. So it was exactly the book I needed at the exact time.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah.
So
you can read my books. You'll know, like, it's not going to depress you.
No.
You may not like it, but it's not going to bring you down. And that was very, very deliberate. So there's someone wrote a review, or I think on Twitter just the other day, and they said I had a hard week and this book like helped. I was like, oh, it made my day. It made my day because I'm just like, I'm writing about superheroes in space. I mean, not going to change your life, but if I can make your week easier, like mission accomplished. I'm thrilled. Couldn't ask for more. And if you think about it a little bit after, that's fantastic. But if you don't, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, and I think we sometimes undervalue how those little moments of joy in a hard week can be life-changing.
Escapism is super important, right? Mm-hmm. Like, my whole life, a huge amount of the joy in my life has come from consuming stories. Yep. I don't know. There's a reason these industries are huge. There's a reason the movie industry is. This isn't. You can't belittle that. Literary people may. It's just escapism. I'm like, no, don't use those. Don't put those two words together in front of me. I don't. Don't please. Escapism is great, wonderful. And that's what I'm writing. I'm very clear on.
Yep.
What I'm doing, and that's it.
Well, anyone who is watching who hasn't read Wistful yet, down in the comments below or in the description box, whatever that thing is, there are links to all 3 of the Hybrid Helix books.
Thank you.
And links to Joe's contacts for Twitter and stuff if you want to go and say hi.
Follow me on Twitter. I love Twitter. While it lasts, we got to get on there and tell all the jokes. As long as it's running and the lights are still on.
The lights are still on.
Writing Twitter is so good.
Yeah.
They're lower.
So yeah, well, thank you very much, Joe. And I appreciate everybody in the chat for hanging out with us and anybody who's watching after. And yeah, hope everybody has an awesome rest of your weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tori. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.